Tonight, shocking allegations against another teacher.
Teacher accused of abusing a student has given birth to a baby fathered by her young victim.
If you're a man, doesn't it feel like society constantly villainizes you while women get away with anything? The data proves you right. Female offenders are exploding at an alarming rate, and yet nobody is talking about why. That's why today we're exploring why this is happening, what led up to this crisis, and the truth about female teachers that nobody wants to talk about. The truth is, while men get maximum sentences for the same crimes, women are often let off on probation claiming victimhood, misogyny, and even romance.
I'm not a predator. I'm not a sex offender. I'm not a threat or a danger to anyone.
Yet more and more young female teachers are throwing their lives away for illegal thrills. And the reason is way worse than you think. Because one thing is clear, this is a crisis. And the data shows that if something doesn't change, we might never recover. This is why. Listen, I'll say the quiet part out loud that nobody wants to say. Society loves female predators, and that's why women can go to school in body contour dresses to be in front of a bunch of middle and high school students. It's why female teachers who groom and sleep with underage boys simply get called an affair by the media and forgotten about the next day. It's why most of the time they get a slap on the wrist compared to the same crimes committed by men. Why the internet labels young male victims as lucky. And why US courts even ordered the underage victims to pay child support to their predators who got pregnant. And I'll get to all of this in a bit, but let's hit the hard facts first, because this isn't a fringe conspiracy. It's a documented epidemic eroding our society, and the consequences are astronomical. US Department of Education data shows sexual violence reports in K-12 jumped 55% from just under 10,000 in 2015 to 2016 to 15,000 in 2017 to 2018, with assault and attempted assault up a staggering 99%. Fast forward to 2022, 350 educators arrested for assaults against their students, a sharp rise from pre-pandemic levels. And here's the twist nobody talks about. Females now make up almost half of those predators, a massive surge from under 10% historically. But people are asking, is it really because there's more female predators, or are more men simply coming forward? The answer is more complicated than you might think.
The years of sexual abuse he says he suffered at the hands of a teacher.
Just because I'm a man doesn't mean that it should be shunned away, because I was a child. I wasn't a man. I was a boy.
And unfortunately, it is shunned away. A recent Psychiatric Times article shines light on the phenomenon, citing that women account for fewer than 10% of all arrests made for sexual offenses. It's strongly suspected that this figure represents an underestimate of the actual numbers of crimes that occur. For example, 60 to 80% of men who faced this type of abuse during their childhood identified a female perpetrator. Female abusers typically have a history of substance abuse, and they often commit the crimes in their 20s and 30s. In America, an average of 1 in 10 kids faces educator sexual misconduct. That's over 4.5 million US students. But underreporting is rampant. Only 10% of victims come forward thanks to shame, threats, or just disbelief, especially when the perp is a quote-unquote nurturing woman. So what is driving this? Let's pull back the curtain on some of these cases and see if we can notice patterns. I've dug into 2020 to 2026 cases focusing on female surges and uncovered a lot of evidence. Case number 1 is Naomi Takea Craig, a 33-year-old married music teacher in Mandurah, Australia. From August 2024 to December 2025, she assaulted her 12-year-old student at Frederick Irwin Anglican School in multiple locations, and she even made illegal videos of the act. The shocker here is that she gave birth on January 8th, 2026 to the boy's baby, and DNA confirmed it. Her husband thought the child was his the whole time. Meanwhile, the boy's friends noticed how he shifted from talking about sports to more sensitive personal topics. She pleaded guilty to 15 charges in January of 2026, with sentencing set for March 27th of this year. To date, there's still no jail time, and media frames it as an illegitimate affair or relationship. Just imagine if the roles reversed and a 33-year-old male teacher had done the exact same thing. Well, we don't have to guess. Joshua Wiebe in Groesbeck, Texas at 33, the same age as Naomi, did this exact crime but reversed. He was sentenced April 2025 to life without parole plus 100 years on top of that, and rightfully so. But I'm betting if Naomi gets any time at all, it'll be nothing compared to this. Case number 2 is McKenna Kindred, a teacher at Central Valley High School in Washington back in 2022. She got inappropriate with a 17-year-old boy, started with private messages, and then escalated to a quote-unquote marathon session at her home while her husband was away. She pleaded guilty in March 2024. 2 years of probation, a fine, an S-offender registry, but no prison time at all. She surrendered her license, stayed married, and moved to Idaho like nothing ever happened.
I understand the gravity of my actions and the harm they have caused, and I take full responsibility for them. I know that this past year has been incredibly difficult for all involved. As a result of my actions, I've lost my career, valuable friendships, freedoms, and have let down countless people who have placed their trust in me.
This is a perfect example of how in America you can be the worst of predators, but if you're a pretty woman and do a bit of fake crying, you can escape 100% of your jail time, move to another state, and live your life basically unaffected. But when you look at comparable cases of the exact same crimes just committed by men, at least 4 to 10 years of prison and a minimum of 10 years probation. If women want equal rights, then why doesn't the state enforce equal justice? This raging double standard becomes even more apparent when Matt Murphy, a former prosecutor, commented on this case and predators in 2024.
I can tell you from personal experience in dealing with these cases over and over again as a prosecutor, sex offenders, especially sexual predators, do not get better. All the therapy in the world does not help them.
Okay, so male predators can never change and they all need to be held accountable. Fair, I think we can all agree. But in the same breath, he says this.
Now, this situation may be a little bit different because of the circumstances. This woman, I can't imagine her marriage was exactly great. Whether she is an actual sexual predator or not, or whether this was a one-off is open for debate.
Just look at how the tone shifts as soon as it's about a woman. All of a sudden it's her circumstances and her bad marriage, insinuating it might even be her husband's fault somehow. Male simps are what keep this alive, and it becomes even more apparent when the husband came out to her defense. Quote, "As McKenna's husband, it has been a challenging year full of uncertainty. However, McKenna's remorse for her actions is the one thing that is certain. Where most would give up under pressure and guilt, McKenna has channeled that remorse into facing her mistakes, actively seeking the help she needs, and regularly working to rise above it all. This has become apparent to me through our continued professional counseling as we work through and address the underlying issues that contributed to this situation. We are both determined to emerge from this experience as stronger and more resilient spouses and members of society." And then he goes on to compile a florilegia about how amazing his wife actually is. Now let's bring in one of the most sickening cases, Christina Formella, a 30-year-old former special education teacher and soccer coach at Downers Grove South High School at Illinois. She groomed a 15-year-old male student starting when she was just engaging in over 50 acts from January 2023 to August or September of 2024, including more than 45 times right in the classroom and multiple times at her home. The boy's mother discovered explicit texts like, "I love having S with you," in March of 2025, which led to her arrest during a traffic stop. Now, what's even more disturbing is that Formella allegedly used her authority as a tutor and a coach for what she called quote-unquote mentoring sessions that quickly turned sexual, fitting the boundary blurring pattern that we see in almost all of the female cases. Prosecutors claim she planned to defraud her husband's family for millions and flee the country with the teen, highlighting those quote-unquote forbidden thrill psychological motives that drive so many of these women, and you'll see why in a bit. She was denied pretrial detention twice and was released practically scot-free with light conditions. No school entry, no contact, she resigned and surrendered her license, but no jail yet. Her family even came out claiming quote misogyny and gender persecution in July of 2025, downplaying this incident as a simple affair. Now there's dozens and dozens and dozens more of these cases that have been coming out over the past few months, but these cases all connect on key patterns. On the surface, they are all seemingly normal and unsuspecting young women with no past criminal records using their authority for control and often getting lenient outcomes like probation compared to male severe jail time. And we'll get to that, but the fact is these videos take weeks to produce each, and I'm currently a one-man team, but luckily the supporters over at buymeacoffee.com/lungsoffaith help make these videos possible, so if you like these videos, please consider donating over there. And something new that I'm doing is supporters at $50 a month plus are credited as producers with real input on future topics. Back to the plot. The gender bias in sentencing is well documented. Females often receive lighter penalties due to stereotypes portraying them as quote less threatening or stressed out, while males face harsher jail terms for similar offenses. In 2020 to 2026 cases, females convicted of student assault got probation or short sentences in 60 to 80% of high-profile instances, versus males averaging 2 to 20 years. It says that the mean sentencing length for offenders was significantly different for male educators than for female educators, with male educators receiving almost 5 times the length of sentence that female educators did. A 2021 study found that females are 2 to 3 times less likely to receive incarceration, influenced by victim age and gender, compared to men. In a 2020 US analysis of 20 different cases, many female perpetrators asserted, quote, genuine romantic and emotional relationships, or, quote, consensual connections as a defense, categorizing them as, quote, teacher/lover types who claim it's not abuse but education about A 2018 UK study noted females often rationalize as love in court, leading to lenient outcomes. Similarly, Vandiver and Kircher's 2004 study on registered female sexual offenders identifies the heterosexual nurture type, where women develop sexual relations with children and adolescents on the basis of feeling love or a desire for intimacy. These women also often mistakenly assert that their behavior is not abusive. Now, this line of reasoning is surprisingly a big factor of women's reduced sentences, but it typically isn't enough. The most popular reason is the same in almost all cases, with female perpetrators' attorneys citing, quote, mental illnesses in an attempt to plead insanity. For example, in 2004, Deborah LaFave, a 23-year-old teacher, was arrested for having sex with a 15-year-old male student. Her attorney, on the basis of his client's history of extremes of mood and other symptoms of bipolar illnesses, prepared an insanity defense. He stated, quote, here we have a woman that by every societal standard can get a date, can get a man, yet she destroyed her career, destroyed her marriage. I believe the only logical reason why Deborah LaFave did what she did was because of her mental illness. The truth is, however, that currently there's little empirical evidence related to the presence of mental illness in female sexual offenders overall. So what's actually causing this and why? Well, this is where all of this starts to make more sense when we look at the obvious influences in social engineering that have been taking place over the last century. Women crave romantic love. This is no secret, and it's generally normal. In the old world, they would have received this by getting married young and living it out in real life. However, in the 1900s, and especially at the turn of the century, as you're a viewer of my channel, you should know this very well, this became a pipe dream because the sexual revolution was busy telling women to pursue careers, be promiscuous, and use contraception, and that they would fundamentally find their meaning in this.
Well, that's what's being said, that we're living in a day of the sex revolution.
However, while they were being intellectually convinced of this postmodernist worldview, their biology and intrinsic desire for romance didn't go away. And this, we come to learn, was by design, in order to isolate pleasure from purpose and to replace the family with a state agenda. And I'll get to that in a bit, but in order to keep women's desires for families placated, corporate media and its moral breakdown provided a perfect opportunity to sell romance. A different kind of romance. Because this surge didn't happen in a vacuum, it's fueled by a cultural poison. Media and romance genres programming women to romanticize criminal deviances, blurring lines between fantasy and felony. For most of Christian human history, the love stories we looked up to were about ordered and meaningful relationships involving marriage, monogamy, and society upheld a very strict standard for what could even be published. However, over the course of centuries, the post-Enlightenment West began to lose any sight of morality, and ideas, even bad ones, flowed way more freely than they ever have. Today we're talking about a $50 billion romance industry where, quote, forbidden teacher-student tropes dominate, turning abuse into passion. Studies show that 70% of female readers indulge in these deviant pornographic novels, normalizing power imbalances that spill into real life. So let's look at some of these popular novels and what they're normalizing. But first, a brief word from our sponsor. The truth is, if we're going to fight the degeneracy of this culture, we can't do it while we're compromised ourselves. The reality is that if you don't actually want to quit, no program on earth is going to do it for you. But if you, like many others, have a firm resolve that you no longer want to be a slave to porn, Freedom Group could be a valid next step, offering personalized one-on-one coaching and real accountability so that you're not fighting this alone. When you sign up, you will automatically get paired with a dedicated coach and a community of men trying to quit as well, plus access to a complete 12-month system with a very high success rate, weekly calls, daily habits, and mindset training. Many reviews said that this coaching and accountability were what made the biggest difference for them. But the best news is that unlike most porn quitting programs that hide behind a paywall, Freedom Group offers a free consultation so that you can find out right away if this is something that will actually work for you. Scan the QR code or go to freedomgroup.co. Link is in the description. Back to the plot. Bestsellers like Colleen Hoover's Slammed, which highlight teacher-student love, or Harlequin's Forbidden lines push deviant fantasies, and women consume 90% of all romance books, with surveys revealing that 40% fantasize teacher roles. These books then bled into film and movies, which certified this new dogmatic reality, that transcending boundaries is freedom, and that scandal is truth. Movies and TV simply ran with it and amplified this with pieces like Pretty Little Liars, which normalized Arya and Ezra's teacher affairs as soulmates. This was watched by millions of young women growing up. Then you have Riverdale and Elite, which romanticize criminal teacher-student bonds. and viewers internalize these traumatic and disordered relationships as thrill. That's exactly why we're seeing more and more of these cases where the female teachers don't just cross the line. They build an entire romantic fantasy in their heads and treat these underage boys like full-grown soulmates. Look at Christina Formella. Prosecutors found a torrid memoir in the Notes app on her phone. She didn't write like a predator. She wrote like a heartbroken girlfriend in a Colleen Hoover novel. She blamed the 16-year-old boy for, quote, ruining her marriage, screaming in all caps, quote, "You ruined us. I warned you we should have never started dating, and every single effing time you came back and convinced me it would be fine. You gaslit me." Then she raged, "I'm effing mad I let a 16-year-old F with me like that. You lost the girl who would have stuck with you through thick and thin." And in a section literally titled, quote, "Manifestations," she wrote her delusional happy ending, quote, "We will be in each other's lives forever. We will be able to love each other while also living our own lives." This isn't just a crime scene. This is a woman who probably consumed years of forbidden romance media and turned a 15-year-old student into the tortured hero of her own personal love story. But how did any of this even become legal? How did we go from a moral society that did everything in its power to suppress such deviant material to one where it's actively being pushed in our own education system? The push traces directly to Alfred Kinsey, a zoologist turned sex researcher, and his devious Institute for Sex Research, which was bankrolled by the Rockefeller Foundation, with initial grants in 1941 escalating to $40,000 annually by 1947, which is $600,000 in today's currency. Now this is where it gets dark, because Kinsey's reports portrayed attraction to minors and orgasms using data sourced from predator cases in Table 34 of his report, labeling them as natural variations on a sexual spectrum and not as criminal or disordered.
Many of Kinsey's findings and techniques remain controversial, including his occasional reliance on the accounts of admitted child abusers. Still, he's widely hailed as a trailblazer in a previously taboo field.
This laid groundwork for all of the normalization we see today. This Rockefeller-funded model influenced sexology, the psychus curricula, and the global standards still used currently in today's teacher training. Now it starts to make a little more sense, doesn't it? Kinsey's male and female reports ignited the latter parts of the sexual revolution. Hugh Hefner, explicitly inspired by them, launched Playboy in December of '53, calling himself Kinsey's pamphleteer, and US Supreme Court rulings in the 1960s struck down any sort of bans on erotic novels and films, unleashing the quote-unquote golden age of porn. Before this, any sort of depictions of erotic material, even slightly, was criminally punishable by jail time. Now at this time, pornographic romance novels boomed, with 1972's The Flame and the Flower and 1974's Sweet Savage Love, graphic, rape-heavy bestsellers that sold millions and spawned the Harlequin empire. The intellectual groundwork and the justification for all this came from Freud's libido theory, Wilhelm Reich's sexual liberation politics, and Kinsey himself. Now all this starts looking less accidental once we understand where this all stemmed from, and that's why it's so important to go back to the sources, which is what we do on this channel, so don't forget to subscribe. So the real question becomes, why did we ever abandon the wisdom of the ancients? Why did everything change in the 1960s? Because this is the truth bomb that nobody wants to admit, because it's simply offensive to modern ears and goes against every single thing we as modern people know. The ancients were always extremely suspicious of women being in positions of influence, such as that of teachers, and mixed gender education in general. The reality is that historically, women have often taught their own children, but never in the formalized, public, unsupervised settings that we see today, where females make up 76% of US K-12 educators, wielding authority over mixed groups of kids. From the sources we have available, in ancient times, education was always customized and gender-specific, as humans have always understood that the genders function differently from one another. This was never seen as misogyny or woman hatred. Formal education was typically male only, and young women were taught domestic functions and virtues by their mothers. The Christian church fathers were crystal clear on this. They cautioned against women in positions of authority over children, viewing uncontrolled female influences as dangerous to moral order and family structure. But why? Were they all just being misogynistic and mean for thousands of years? St. John Chrysostom warned that women's emotional nature could lead to improper bonds, urging them to focus on homemaking. He says very bluntly in his homily on 1 Timothy, "Shall not women then be saved? Yes, by means of children. The whole female race shall be saved by childbearing. God has granted you another opportunity of salvation by the bringing up of children, so that you are saved, not only by yourselves but by others, if they continue in the faith and charity and holiness with sobriety." Earlier in the same homily he says, quote, "The woman taught once and ruined all. On this account therefore," he says, "let her not teach. He is speaking of the sex collectively. The sex is weak and fickle. Augustine echoed this too, interpreting 1 Timothy 2:12 as barring women from authority to avoid temptation and disorder. This idea held for millennia until the 19th century upended everything, and frankly I think that everyone can admit that that's when everything started becoming a disaster. More men and women are both beginning to rethink the role of men and women in society and questioning the 20th century egalitarian narratives. People are beginning to ask, was the old world really that misogynistic? Or was it just sober in acknowledging the differences but complementarity between men and women? Critics might call these claims absolutist, and that's fair. Historical trends are often correlative, but it snaps into focus when we examine the engineers behind the shift and their true motivations. Socialists, often intertwined with feminist movements, advocated for women as teachers to advance progressive agendas like labor rights, social justice, and challenging patriarchal norms, seeing women educators as key to instilling egalitarian values in the youth. Clara Zetkin, a German socialist feminist who lived in the 1800s, in her 1896 speech, quote, "Only in conjunction with a proletarian woman," Zetkin argued that women teachers could spread the socialist ideals the best. Quote, "The proletarian woman fights hand in hand with the man of her class against capitalist society. The education and intellectual development of women has now become necessary for the economic machine itself," unquote. She saw women in education as key to raising revolutionary children, condemning bourgeois norms. Now we take Vladimir Lenin, the Bolshevik leader, where he says, quote, "Give me 4 years to teach the children and the seed I have sown will never be uprooted." Lenin promoted women in education to instill communist values, viewing schools as emotional tools to detach kids from family religion. Post-1917 Russia prioritized female teachers for, quote, "revolutionary upbringing," pushing progressive emotionalism over traditional norms. A 2021 study in Modern American History details how socialist feminists in early 20th century New York City teachers' unions pushed for women's roles in education to promote democracy, maternity leave, and anti-capitalist ideas, viewing schools as sites for societal transformation. Jacobin's 2021 article highlights socialist feminists organizing in the early 1900s to allow pregnant teachers to work, framing it as part of broader progressive fights against gender restrictions, enabling women to influence curricula with, quote, "emotionalistic social reforms." A 2025 Globalization Societies and Education piece notes how teachers' unions, influenced by socialism, rearticulated as feminist movements to push progressive issues like racial justice and social reproduction in education. Now, behind the scenes, the Rockefeller family was funding a lot of this stuff, from 1903's General Education Board standardized schools, centralizing control, and flooding them with female teachers. By 1900, women were 74% of US educators, up from barely any pre-1800s. This shift, fueled by feminism's, quote, "empowerment," dismantled traditional safeguards. Now, where does all of this put us here in 2026? Well, it's no wonder homeschooling has exploded all over the world. 3 million plus US kids are now homeschooled, up 78% post-COVID, with near zero abuse risks in home settings. It's a pace of life where liturgy, practical skill development, and family bonding take priority, retaining the father's role as priest of his household, unchallenged by state authority. But it's not without its own challenges. It's banned outright in Germany and Sweden, restricted in over 10 countries, and in the US, progressive unions fight back, labeling it as unsafe to protect their grip on society and the household. Yet, Christian families lead the charge. Homeschoolers score 15 to 30% higher academically, with stronger morals baked in. Ultimately, the world relies on families like this that refuse to negotiate with terrorists, that will hold down the fort. Don't forget to share this video with someone who needs to see it, and until next time, this is Lungs of Faith, and as always, don't negotiate with terrorists.
They wanna count me out.